Good morning, everyone. How are you? It's been 2 weeks, I think, since our last meeting. And yes, midterm is over. So we are now done with the first half of the semester. Now, pat yourself for for a job well done. Now, if you think that your best was not enough, well, you still have less than 2 months to prove that you belong here in Central Mindanao University. Now, today we will be discussing a sensitive topic. So, patnubay ng magulang ay kailangan. But I believe wala naman siguro tayong minors dali kay mga gore naman mo. But if you have children around you, perhaps na may mga tapad nga bata, inyong manghod, inyong anak, I suggest that you put on your earphones or you go to a private room because, ito ba, ang programang ito ay rated as PG. So, yeah, our topic this morning is, wait lang ha, drug abuse. So later we will learn what are those drugs na ano sa makaingon nga drug abuse na siya and So here's our topic outline for today. First, we will define the terms, and then the PDEA annual report, and of course, we will study the reasons why people use drugs, the classifications of drugs, the most commonly used drugs and its effects, not only to our body, but it includes the effects to our society, the effects of drug abuse, and the classifications of drug users according to the frequency sa ilahang paggamit. But now allow me to share this story. This is a true story. This happened in my school, college pa ko. And ako siyang classmate. Nakaabot siya sa among school, very sad and very disappointed. Now, she lived in a challenged area sa ilahang lugar. And kanang bitong, di ba pag gamay kayo ilahang dalan ba, nga dili mo pwede magtagbo. So, kanang isa ra bad ilahang dalan, so maagihan niya tanan iyang silingan before siya makaabot sa ilahang kanto. And then gitabo siya sa isa ka friend ra pud niya nga kaedad ra pud niya. So college naman siya, dili na siya minor. And then gipamalihugan ra gud siya nga kanang tago lang ato siya sa pangalang Irene nga zay kanang ihatag sa ning pitaka didto sa ilahang sa man ang ilaboy kay aron nga naa siya mapamasahi sa iyahang pagskwela or ma-allowance baka or whatever. Basta kay gisugo lang siya nga ipahatod ang pitaka. So, syempre as a normal person, naturally, we will help. Iguro man nato ihatod. Di mo po na siya yung anak kabugat. Okay? So, yes, tama mo. Tama mo unsay sulod ato nga pitaka. Later he knew nga nadakpan to ang iyahang gihatdan pero wala na sakpan nga naa sa iyahang mga nabalaan na lang niya ba nga nadakpan to siya nga silingan. So she was in school very disappointed about herself because she allowed herself to be an instrument nga makaabot to ang drugs dito sa iyahang friend. Of course, neighbors naman niya, gamay raman ang area. So kailan niya tanan, friends niya tanan. And disappointed siya sa iyahang self because kanang sa kadugay daw niya nagpuyuan nga lugar, she could have known, right? And disappointed po siya on their friendship nga gigamit pa gyud siya, a very innocent girl nga gusto lang mag-eskwela, who will try to change the future of their family. Gusto lang makahuman, makagraduate, gamiton pa gyud siya. So there were a lot going on in her mind at that time. So it was just a normal day until she knew what was inside the wallet. So this story of Irene reminds you that it's happening around you. Okay? So be vigilant, be cautious of what's happening around you because basin ikaw isa ka sa mga magamit or for example, 'di ba sa mga airports gina-discourage gid ng dili ta mo tabang but gina-remind lang na to be careful kinsa inyong mga ginatabangan. Like sa airport, syempre, as a gentleman, suguon ka sa imuhang very chatty nga seatmate nga pwede nimo ibutang sa taas ako ang bag or pwede nimo bantayan kay mag-CR sa ko or whatever. Ang daghan kaayo mga nadakpan ana nga dili nila kaano-ano, gisugo lang sila, gibilin lang sa ilaha or sila lang ang gipasaka siguro sa bag, kinabugatan kunuha itong girl or whatever. And isip pa sa ka-gentleman, of course, it's normal that you help, di ba? But we are advised na if maka-encounter mo ingana nga mga situations, just ask for assistance from the flight attendants or an airport officer para dili ka mo ang madakpan in case nga um, something is wrong with the baggage na gipabantayan sa inyo. So as you see, on our third slide, ato anang nakita na nato ang impact ba sa paggamit sa drugs. Even our atong pagka-matinabangon, gaka-apektuhan, gaka-trauma ang uban mo tabang because they wanted to present. It's true. Nga tungod lang kay gipang sugo rin na sila, gipabantayan ang bag. Their lives changed at that moment. So let's go to the next slide. So this is the report, the annual report of PDEA 2019. So nakuha lang ko mga 4 points dito sa ilahang report. Now, according to that report, there are two most used drugs in our country, which are shabu and marijuana. I'm sure you're familiar with the terms. I'm dili man really familiar with the in-depth na gid nga understanding, but I'm sure you have encountered these terms na sa inyong kinabuhi. And as of 2017, there are more than 40,000 barangays in our country na nasudlan na of drugs. And people who suffered from addiction to illegal drugs, more often than not, put a strain to their personal and professional life. Aside from health concerns, these people tend to lose their homes, families, friends, and jobs. So there you have it, right? Na-summarize diri sa report sa PDEA ang impact sa paggamit sa drugs. So syempre, maapektuhan imong professional life. We have known people, di ba, makadungog mo sa mga news nga tagas na kayo sa ilahang mga positions. But they lost their jobs, they lost their benefits, they lost their titles because of drugs. They were arrested, they lost their job, and syempre kung wala kay trabaho, makaapekto po sa imong pamilya because you provided na kay mga ginapang eskwela, so mawadan po to sila og mga it's really hard, right? Dili lang ikaw ang maapektuhan, but also the people around you. So of course, your homes, your families, your immediate family gud ang maapektuhan. Maybe your children will be ashamed, will be embarrassed sa imuha kay iskandaluso kay ka nga tao sa inyong neighborhood and they don't want to go home. So dysfunctional na imuhang family, your friends of course, and as I mentioned earlier, your job. Now, due to vast and porous shorelines and the various entry and exit points in the country, the advancers of illegal activities are very resilient and irrepressible to the illicit traffic in and out of the country. So this is the 2019 annual report of PDEA. Now, before we proceed to, I think, classifications of drugs man at ang next slide, allow me to share how would I define this story? Not dili pa wonderful, inspiring story of Michael. So as much as I wanted to kanang sa may tawag ani i-summarize na lang nako sa inyo, but I think it would be better if I will just read the story, his story nga siya gid mismo ang nagsulat. So it's inspiring. I was an only child. I think many can relate. I was an only child, the nerdy kid growing up, and didn't really feel as if I fit in with any one specific group of people. I wanted to be accepted, and so I started hanging out with the cool kids and partying. It just kind of took off from there. It went from an occasional thing to every chance kind of thing. So I went from smoking to drinking to doing anything I could get my hands on. I found freedom in getting high, and for the first time in my life, I was comfortable. As things progressed with time, I became addicted and fell in love with the beats. I started using OxyContin in 2009, which eventually led me using heroin. My addiction to heroin took priority over everything I did in life. I died a total of 15 times due to drug overdose. One would think that time, ano to, overdosing time and time again would give someone the desire to get clean. In reality, I wanted to die. I absolutely hated the person that I had become as a result of my addiction to drugs and alcohol. I have been arrested numerous times for multiple DUIs, shoplifting, larceny, possession, driving unrevoked for DUI, and harboring a fugitive from justice. I was on a total path of destruction. I have been in a total of 7 treatment programs and multiple detox centers, trying over and over to put my life back together. In April 2019, I went back to jail on a home confinement by violation because I was getting high in another program and I was just tired. For the first time in my life, I felt completely defeated. And so when I went in April, I surrendered and turned to God for help. I was ready for a different direction in life and was tired of doing the same thing over and over. I was tired of hurting people, hurting family, and not being able to be a dad because addiction was in my life. I decided at that point that if I was given another opportunity to put my life back together, I was going to take it and run with it. I did about 130 days in jail and was given yet another opportunity to change my life. I entered the long-term treatment program with Recovery Point and begun my journey in changing my life. Today, I have over 9 months completely substance-free. Everything changed for me, but this time around, I had the gift of desperation and was willing to do whatever was asked of me in order to achieve long-term sobriety. I remember laying in jail, praying for God to help me, and absolutely willing to do whatever it took for a new direction in life. Instead of viewing it as a consequence, I viewed it as an opportunity. Today, I have given my life back. I am rebuilding relationships with my family. I am rebuilding trust. I am able to be a dad today and a positive influence in my son's life. I continue to work towards cleaning up the wreckage of my past. I am a recovery coach and can be a point of light in a world of darkness and watch others transform as they find their purpose in life. There is a way out. It was not easy, but at the end of the day, it was worth it. There is a lot more to living life than to get up and to worry about putting the next one in you. No matter what, at the end of the day, the reality is still there. It is something that you have to face. It is just a matter of trying to reach out for help and get guidance on how to face it. There is a freedom in the fact that you can wake up every day with a clear conscience that you did not deliberately harm somebody the day before your selfish benefit. Today, I strive to be a light of hope and have the ability to share my own personal experience with others in hopes of leading others towards a better way of life. So that was the story of Michael. And if you can see sa iyahang sa story ni Michael, if you can see sa story ni Michael, no dili ilim iyang giagyan. He started using 2009. So it was a decade. Isa ka dekada iyahang na waste sa iyahang kinabuhi. And that decade, nakahuman na ka duha ka degrees, di ba? Like 4 years naman ang degree. And if nag-proceed ka na doctor na ka na lawyer na ka na, you could have helped your family sa imuhang sweldo, or you could have built the family of your own, right? na naka-elementary ana, naka-eskwela na ka ana sa imong anak, you could have built your home, or you could have bought your dream car, or build na ka sa imong career. So dako kayo na ang katuigan ng 10 years or a decade para i-waste ni imong life into drugs. And look what happened to Michael, right? Dili ilalim iyang giagian para maka-recover siya. And even if you will say nga naka-recover man gihapon siya, ma'am, but recovery was hard. It was really, really hard, and regret was harder. So remember that one. So there are, I think, many, many ways kung maingon magaling mo nga, because Michael was socially isolated, kay nerd man siya ra isa, naglisod siya pangitag friends. So there are many ways to have fun, and taking drugs is not one of them. Okay, so we will proceed to the next thing. So these are the terms that you should take note. So when we say drugs, these are chemicals that affect a person in any way. So there are drugs that are harmful to our body. There are drugs that are supposedly good for us. But when we abuse them, when we take them, nga dili sa dili prescribed nga time or condition, of course, it will be harmful to our body. But I'm pretty sure that you know the kind of drug that we are talking right now. So when we say drug abuse, kanang continuous na pag misuse of any substance. So pag, di ba, may misuse, meaning dili siya para dila, dili siya pang recreational, dili siya pang party, dili siya pang lingaw-lingaw. But ginahimo nato siyang murag ginahimo nato siyang sukdanan usahay sa tong friendship, ginahimo nato nga gina-abuse nato ang iyahang gamit. So dili siya pang dira. That's why it is called abuse, because there is misuse in that substance. So drug abuse exists when a person continually uses a drug other than its intended purpose. So if this will continue, it can lead to drug dependence, a state of physical and psychological dependence, or both on a dangerous drug. When we say drug dependency, I'm sure you have an idea sa term. Well, if dependent na ang tao sa drugs, he or she will experience withdrawal reactions after abstaining from drugs. So kung dependent na ka, dili nakakatulog, di nakakatarog kaong, dili nakakatarog hunahuna without it, pag withdraw ni mo ana, when you will decide to stop taking that drug, grabe ang effect ana sa imuhang lawas. So it would be better if you will not start using. But why do people use drugs? Why did Michael use drugs? Diba? He was not curious, but he wanted to belong in a circle, or he wanted to have friends. He wanted to have maybe barkada. Dito siya nalingaw. But look what led him. Look kung gilid iyahang life tungod sa paggamit sa drugs. Now, first, we have family history or genetic. If you have a family history of drug addiction, you may, okay, when we say you may, pwede na, pwede wala, you may have a genetic predisposition to develop an addiction to drugs or alcohol. It is stated that about 30 to 70% of persons' risk for addiction is linked to the genes they are born with, along with other social factors. Okay, so naadyo nakabutang dira along with other social factor. Wala nagpasabot nga pwede na nimo pasumanginlan imuhang mga kalululohan, imuhang mama or imuhang papa because they are users. But of course, pwede nimo i-stop ang chain ana. Okay? Be the change. Start the change in yourself so that the children born after you, the children around you, ang imuhang mga anak, dili na makasinati sa imuhang na sinatian. It seemed like fun. Lingaw man siya, di ba? Just like Michael, nalingaw siya. Dito niya nakita ang belongingness sa paggamit sa drugs. No, problems can arise when using drugs or drinking becomes something the young person falls back on again and again. If drug use becomes consistent, it is very easy to slip into addiction without even noticing. Kung permanente na ninyo mo gamiton, kung inyong barkada gagamit na ana, without knowing it, pag mata ninyo drug addict na ka, sige na nimo siya pangitaan. Consistent na ang inyong paggamit sa drug. Okay? So, yeah, it's true that some teens or some young adults, they were just bored or kanang the bored sila ba niya, na curious sila, unsa day lingawan na, anong happy kayo sila, anong bibo kayo sila. So they started using it and regret it in the end. Okay, everybody is doing it. May tag everybody, wala nagpasabot no nga kanang kita na tanan sa kalibutan. But everybody here nga ang nabuhat man gud ani is an organization sila that help sa mga drug users or maybe at counseling. It's an organization. So according sa ilahang na interview, everybody is doing it. Ako ang palibot gagamit, ako ang mga friends gagamit. So when I was 17 or 18 years old, we would sit around and smoke pot and drink beers in my buddy's garage. So, mo ihang kakakita ba nga, ihang friends, ginagamit man na, so dili siya magpaulahi sa trend, which is not good. Curious ko. So, gusto ko makabalo, unsa di ay naka-intense ilahang experience kung makatake sila of drugs. Okay? Even if he does not have a particular need himself, bisan og dili niya kinahanglanon sa iyang kaugalingon, but if gaka-intriga siya sa experience, it could become a destructive. I-emphasize gidara, it's a destructive habit. I am in the wrong squad, just like Michael, right? What happened to Michael? It started with a squad. Na-feel niya nga belong kayo siya. So, nag-take siya and he enjoyed it and regret it in the end. So according to this teen, I didn't have a bad childhood. I was raised well. There is no particular reason I should have gone into that direction, but I did. I fell in with the wrong crowd and it made it just that easy to start using drugs. So maybe your squad is telling you to do so. You know what? True friends will not allow you to do this. True friends should pick you if imuha ning pagabuhaton, should have prevented you from doing it. Okay. If you think true friends na nimo sila, dili ka nila agdahon nagingon ani. And if true friend pug ka sa ilaha, you will advise them not to use it because it's not true. They are not true if they will lead you to destruction. So drugs or alcohol seem to offer solutions, and the more of those solutions seem to be needed, the more often a person may indulge. Ayaw dyan magtuuan na nga. Daghan mo kay madungog na kanang grabe man gud ang problema sa among balay, ma'am. Kanang suba palahubog na kayo akong papa, grabe na ang problema, daghan na kay kabit akong papa, pati na akong mama, akong mga kuya, gubot kay sa balay, sige siningkahay, sige sila hubog-hubog. Tapos maglisod pa jud gusto akong pag-eskwela, wala may kwarta, baon namin sa utang, na priso pa jud akong ate. And then you took drugs. Did it solve the problem? Nagkakwarta ba mo? Nakagawas ba imong ate sa prisuhan? Nabuhi ba mo? Nakakaon ba mo tarong? Walay na-solve na problem ang drugs, ladies and gentlemen. So, if you have a problem, seek help. Okay? Kung aha ka, pwede maybe seek counsel from professionals, but do not take drugs. It will never be a solution to your problem. Now, let's go to the chemical classifications of drugs. When we say opioids, this derived from the drug opium or synthetic versions that mimic the chemical structures of opium. So these opium works. These drugs are very powerful. So the work ni siya by lowering the number of pain signals your body sends to your brain. So gina-block niya ang neurotransmitter sa imuhang brain. More siya kanang actually pain reliever siya. So ingon ana. And what causes its addiction? Because These drugs will alter your brain by creating artificial endorphins. So besides sa iyang i-block ang pain, kaning mga endorphins will make you feel good, 'di ba? They are makapahappy siya sa imuha ba? Ano ba misi ra kag kalit, bibo na kayo imong life ug pinakalit. So magkadugay nga imuhang gamiton, your brain might stop producing endorphins. So mo na iyahang impact. Alcohol, so ginagamit gini siya, no, widely abused na gini siya sa kalibutan. And alcohol creates feelings of pleasure and lowers inhibition. So when we say ka na bang mawala na imuhang kaulaw, nothing is holding you back, so you can say anything under the influence of alcohol. Mabitong daghan kay magmaoy sa alcohol, daghan kay mag-confess because it lowers inhibitions. Now, the other drugs, the benzodiazepines and barbiturates, these drugs function by interacting with a neurotransmitter called GABA. Actually, kaning nga mga drugs, gina-prescribe ni siya sa mga doctors. These drugs, kanang siya, gina-abuse na nato siya or ginagamit nato siya sa dili niya purpose. Mo na siya nga naka-harm siya sa ato ang body. So this drug, ga-create ni siya og kami, ginapakalma kaani nga mga drugs. And then cocaine and stimulants. So these drugs make a person feel energized, focused, and alert for long periods of time. So na yung mga students, well, we're not encouraging you. We will never encourage you to use this. So some students, gamit sila ingon ani daw kay para makastudy sila sa tibuok exam and all. And it's very wrong. Kay kaniya siya nga, ang cocaine, dili siya makapa-bright sa imuha, makapa-alert lang siya. But mura po na ang benefit nga imuhang makuha. The rest, maluya ra gihapon na imuhang lawas, eventually dako na kay kag eye bags, di gihapon ka makahunahon og tarong because your body is bilar ba. Pero alert ka gihapon. So that's why, sumara ko nang kung bilar ka, di ba? Grabe ka kasaputon, irritable kay ka paminaw, dali ra ka ma-irritate. So the same way gihapon ang effects na sa imuha. So this, ayaw ninyo siya gamita, ang cocaine. So na ako'y mga madunggan no nga, kay nag-exam daw sila, daghan kay sila buhatunon tibuok gabi. So mag-take sila ani para mata sila pila ka adlaw nga dili sila maunsa, which is not good. So please do not attempt to use cocaine. Inhalants. So kani siya nga mga drugs, gina-inhale nato ini sila. And they tend to be less addictive than other substances but are incredibly dangerous. Hallucinogens, kana bitawng mag-hallucinate na kana, kay mga madungog, mga makita, mga ma-imagine nga mga situation nga wala ga kahitabo. Cannabis. So, it affects the cannabinoid receptors in your brain, and this drug comes in many different forms and affects each user differently. Actually, kanita nga mga drugs, lahi-lahi ni sila og ato ang body, lahi siya og lahi-lahi ta og reaction sa kada drugs. And then the new psychoactive substances, these refer to anything that has been lab created to mimic naturally occurring drugs, falls into this category. So this includes synthetic cannabis, lab-created ketamine, and more. Wait lang. Okay, now let's go to the commonly used drugs and their effects, starting with alcohol. Now, alcohol abuse is a pattern of problem drinking that results in health consequences, social problems, or both. However, when we say alcohol dependence or alcoholism, it refers to a disease that is characterized by abnormal alcohol-seeking behavior that leads to impaired control over drinking. Kanabit ang di nakamahimot na kung dili nakakainom. I know one doctor ganito siya nga, he cannot sleep without drinking alcohol. So there are short-term and long-term effects of alcohol, and long-term effects include loss of appetite, vitamin deficiencies, stomach ailments, skin problems. So napod kikailan no nga kanang iyahang skin wala jud pag sa una pag mag-inom daw siya ga-rashes lang siya, but until now wala niabot sa point nga wala na natanggal hantod karon naa na sa iyahang skin. Sexual impotence or kanang dili na wala na erection. So lahi po tong dili na makaanak, infertility man to. But when I say impotence, wala na erection na mahitabo. Heart and central nervous system damage and memory loss. Though pag mag-inom mo na usahay daghan kay madumduman nga mga dumanang daghan magmaoy kay daghay madumduman nga mga experiences and happenings sa life. But eventually it will lead to memory loss. So kung perminti ka magsigig inom, perminti na gani sige pa jud. Kung perminti ka gainom, it affects syempre kay maapektuhan man imong brain. So eventually will lead to memory loss. Next is ecstasy, commonly known as ecstasy. It's a psychoactive drug primarily used for recreational purposes. So ang mga gainom ani nga ang mga ga-take ani nga drug usually altered sensations man ang impact sa ilaha, increased energy, empathy as well as pleasure. So yung ani nga time siya maglast and then so mo ni siya iyahang mga some of its many effects. Next, we'll have the marijuana. The physical effects of marijuana, particularly on developing adolescents, can be acute. So marijuana blocks the messages going to your brain and alters your perceptions and emotions, vision, hearing, and coordination. So there is a recent study that 1,023 trauma patients admitted to a trauma unit, 1/3 ana na ay marijuana sa ilahang blood. Now hallucinogens. So these are substances nga kanang mag-hallucinate ka when you take these drugs. Kanang naa kay mga madunggan, mga makita, mga imagine nga dili makita sa usa ka tao. So altered gihapon ng imuhang parts sa imuhang brain. And then the effect can last for 12 hours. So LSD produces tolerance so that users who can take the drug repeatedly must take higher and higher doses in order to achieve the same state of intoxication. Take note, this is extremely dangerous given the unpredictability of the drug and can result in increased risk of convulsions, coma, heart and lung failure, and even death. So, dili gid maayo no katutanan nato mga nagian, wala gyud maayo nga effect sa ato ang lawas if abused or if used not according sa iyahang purpose. Now, effects of drug abuse. So we have defined drug abuse earlier. So when we say physical effects, so mao ni ang iyahang impact. So tolerance, syempre magkadugay, magkadaghan nga imuhang matake, mas magkataas po ang imuhang tolerance. And if magkataas ang imuhang tolerance, magkadako ang imuhang need. So makutan ta kwarta na no kay it involves money man gyud. Dependence, syempre you cannot live without it, part na siya sa imuhang system. And then if suddenly mag-withdraw ka, if suddenly you would want to stop its usage, then dili lalim ang pag-abstain na sa imuhang body. Syempre mag-adjust po ng imuhang body. Overdose. So the level of intoxication reaches a point where it begins to produce physical or psychological harm and can lead to death. Remember Michael, di ba kapila siya na overdose and kapila siya feeling niya namatay siya 15 times. So generally, there is malnutrition, infections, accidents, and blood transmitted disease. And then we will proceed to social effects. Number 1 is conflictual or dysfunctional relationship. As we mentioned earlier, makaapekta gid siya sa imuhang mga relationships with your family, with the people that surrounds you, of course, because they will be afraid sa imuha. Apart from that, they will be embarrassed, right? Sa imuhang mga binuhatan nga wala ka kabalo. Okay, syempre altered man. So lain, makita ka sa imong mga anak, so na mga asawa nga pambiyaan nila ilahang bana kay halos pamatiyon na sila, di ba? Dili gyud siya lalim. Dysfunctional gid ang relationship kung naay drug addict sa inyohang panimalay, or even lang kung dili sa inyohang panimalay, bisan pa say kung makasilingan kag drug addict, di ba, dili lalim. Kung imbitaron ka og piyesta unya medyo maghubog-hubog na, kabalo jud ka that something is wrong. So it can cause dysfunctional relationship. Violence, of course, kabantay mo anang kanang naay mga bata nga gipangdunggab or gipangpatay sa ilahang mga ginikanan and their parents are under its influence. So dili gid maayo nga mag-take tag ingon ani yung mga drugs. If you notice, kung magbasa mo, no, if you will compare siguro cases nga ang ang murderer, ang nagpatay is under its influence versus wala, mas lala gyud tong naka-take of drugs. Like example, rapist. Kung man-rape siya, kung normal, I'm not saying that rape is normal. I mean, if not under influence of drugs ang nang rape, iya lang nang rape on, patyon, pusilon, dunggabon. But if it's under the influence of drugs, then iya ka pa ng lugiton ang mata, kapila pa na nila dunggabon, kanang dili na bitaw nila ma-feel ang ilahang isig ka tao, dili na nila ma-feel nga gasingkit na ang kanang imagine lugiton ang mata, dili ka ludon, uban anak kaunon pa panitan, isa-isahon ang pupo. So that's the one effect sa social effects if under the influence of drugs ang isa ka tao. So that's for the violence, right? So now let's proceed to safety. Of course, most siguro no mahadlok man gyud sa tao nga drug addict, labi na gyud ang mga bata. So kung naa kay anak, syempre kung naa pud kay asawa, syempre kinamang kay anak, tendency is ipalayo gid ang mga bata sa imo. So that's one effect. Now, psychological effects, we have mentioned this a lot earlier. Na ma-alter yun imong perception, imong judgment, and it will cause you stress. So, ingana. And economic effects. Of course, you will lose your job, right? And ato aning na-mention ka ganina nga daghan og naa na sa mga position but they lost the job, the title, the benefits because of drugs. Academic difficulties. Ako na kanang though there are students who used drugs, abi nila nga makatabang sa ilahang health, abi nila nga mas productive sila because they will be awake. But no, mas naglisod hinoon sila sa ilahang performance at school and in their grades. Financial problems, labi na gyud kung dependent na ka and addict na kaayo ka, you will kill for money to buy these drugs, which is not good. Now, here are the classifications of drugs according to the frequency of usage. First is experimenters, those who are just curious, those nga magtilaw-tilaw for experiment siguro, whatever. So those are experimenters. Occasional users, those who use it on special occasions, once in every 2 weeks or twice a week. Regular users are those on a regular basis, approximately 3 to 4 times a week. When we say drug dependence, these are the people who use the drugs every day. And those mentally ill people are those with signs and symptoms of psychotic disorders caused, of course, by the effects of drugs. Now, how to avoid using drugs? So I will only give one tip on how to avoid using drugs. It's say no. I will not waste my time here discussing that you should go to church, be with your family on Sundays, read your Bible, pray before you sleep, before you go out of your room, eat healthy food, be with the right circle of friends. I will not waste my time saying that one because even if gipalibutan na ka og Biblia sa imuhang palibot, if you are not principled enough to say no to drugs, then chances are mutik ra gihapon ka, right? We have known pastors, we have known people nga mga bright kaayo, ginagugol jud nila ilahang time for studies, but still they were arrested because of drugs. So this is my one tip: how to avoid using drugs. Say no, right? Bisan pag imuhang circle of friends taas na kay kag panglantaw sa ilaha because you feel like they are the right one, and then kana imuhang right or the true friends isa maghatag ana sa imuha og drugs, then you'll have to still say no. So that's a thing that I would like to use to end this presentation. Say no. Kung dili man to ninyo madumduman tanang effects, tanang words, or tanang ma-enumerate ang mga classifications of drug users, dili kayo ninyo masabtan ang mga balaod-related drugs, kanina lang akong hangyo. Remember this slide. Say no. You know, daghan na kaayo og problema ang society, and we don't want another CMU1 to add problems to our society. So please, dear students, help us nga ma-educate pod ang mga tao sa inyong palibot to say no to drugs. Our administration is very, very active in its war on drugs, and it helped, right? Nga makuhaan jud and madiscipline ang ato ang mga tao. So say no to drugs. Now I'd like to end this PowerPoint presentation with the quote, "Don't drug yourself down." Remember the story of Michael. Wala jay maayo nga nahatag sa iyaha ang drugs. In fact, he wasted a decade of his life. And that decade, daghan na unta kay kaong natabangan, ana. Dili lang imuhang pamilya, siguro kung nakatukod kag imuhang negosyo, then you have helped the economy, you have helped those people nga na-employ under sa imuhang, nga makasweldo pud sila, makapaeskwela sa ilahang mga anak. And there are a lot good. The drugs give more harm than good, if there's any, to your life. So I would like to appeal, please don't drug yourself down. Remember, in one organization, I think they said, I just can't remember, ana sila na every 17 seconds, there is a person arrested for drug-related violation. So we don't want to see CMU1s nga in the next 17 seconds, CMU1 ang na-arrest. So please do not drug yourself down. So that's all for this morning. I hope that we got something out of our lesson today. And for your assignment, this will serve as your quiz. So you create a poster. May nga tag-create, dili kawaton sa Google. You create your own. You can use Canva, you can use any applications, Photoshop baka ha, or you can draw yourself. You can draw and then take a picture and submit that one to the Google Classroom. Basta what's important is that dili mo mga what output sa uban. So please do be creative in your output. Submit that one to our Google Classroom. So that's it for today. Happy weekend. And I think it's a long weekend for the next 2 days. So thank you, everyone, and good morning.